And welcome to our webinar on Power Church. My name is Shailene, and I'm the Director of Finance for our diocese. I'm so excited that you are able to make it to our webinar. In the past years, Power Church has been one of the most like requested topic, and we are grateful that we Gordon Love is available to do the session for us this year. Before we start the session, let us open in a short prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Father in heaven, we thank you for your steadfast love that never ceases. Your mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Thank you for your presence in our midst in the midst of COVID pandemic. Because of you, we have peace that passeth all understanding. We have joy when we could be discouraged, and we have hope when we could be distressed. We never stop believing that what you have in store for us is greater than what we have seen in the past. Tonight, we welcome your presence in our midst. Be with us as we learn the technical aspects of Power Church software. We thank you for our amazing speaker who will equip us on how to properly use and maximize the benefits of Power Church. Give us attentive spirit and alert minds. Use this as an opportunity to build stronger relationship and friendship amongst us. Bless everyone's heart and desire to serve your kingdom. And may we never get tired in doing good, especially to those who are of the household of faith. This we ask in Jesus' name, amen. At this time, I will call on Elias, our admin assistant, to orient us with the Zoom rules for the meeting. And Elias will also be introducing the speaker for the training. Elias?
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you all can see me. Let me do this. Hi. So we have, let me share this again so you will see. So we have pointed to you, what is it? So we have had some rules here. Please remember to mute yourselves, and just when you are making a question, please remember to unmute yourself to make the question. You can send any questions you may have in the chat. We'll have 3 modules on this session. Mr. Lowe is going to answer them at the end. So even if you have any questions about each module, please write down your questions and feel free to ask them at the end, or you can add the questions in the chat. If your questions are not responded by the end of the webinar, you can feel free to send the instructor an email, and he will answer everybody whenever he has the time. Whenever you have, at the end of the question, when you have at the end of the session, when you have the question and answer, please raise your hand using the reaction part on the bottom of the screen here. And yes, we would like you to enjoy the meeting, and I would just read the guidelines we always use in the diocesan events. We call it respect. Please take responsibility for what you say and feel without blaming others. Use empathetic listening. Be sensitive. Be sensitive to differences in communication styles. Ponder what you hear and feel before you speak. Examine your own assumptions and perceptions. Keep confidentiality. Share constructively to uphold the well-being of the community. And last, trust ambiguity, because we are not here to debate who is right or wrong. So Mr. Lowe is a certified Power Church instructor. He lives in the Lower Mainland here, and he is with us. We invite him to unmute himself. And Mr. Lowe, the stage is all yours.
Okay, so I've just unmuted myself. What else do I need to do here?
You have to start your video.
Start the video?
Yes.
Okay, I can see myself.
Okay, and I'm going to spotlight yourself so everybody will see you as well. So just okay. Is
Okay.
everybody seeing him? Yes, good.
Okay, so I just very briefly want to say that I've been a Power Church instructor for about 25 years. I've worked with Power Church even before that for approximately 10 more years before that. So I've got quite a bit of experience with Power Church. I do training, and I also I work with some churches doing their books. So I am quite busy. But I just want to go over some of the major features of Power Church, just so everybody has a good understanding of the basics. So I'm going to share the screen.
If you can minimize this, and yeah,
okay.
And you can minimize this as well. Okay.
Okay. So let me just bring up, now this is Power Church. This is an active Power Church program that I'm using. So some of the input that I might do are very brief and not totally what you would normally do, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of what the program does. I'm going to start with the membership, and then I'm going to go to the contributions, and finally the accounting. Now, under the membership, Power Church, the setup with members are, you have to pick one of the two adults as the head person in the household. And then all the other people in that household are members. And so you have to pick usually either the wife or the husband as being the head. And then the other people are, they have personal profiles here, which lists all the individuals. But the family mailing list, the family list would be the name of the person you have picked when you first set the family up. The integrated data entry is where you would enter a new family. And this, my program jumps to the actual input of an individual. Normally there'd be a first name and a last name that you'd have to enter. And then you can, some of the newer versions, you can enter the spouse and all the children. And then the next screen goes to the address. And then finally, there's other information about the family that can be entered. So it's all, this is a little bit older version. So basically, once you've entered the name and address, they'll appear here. If there's a family mailing list, it will be here as well. You can enter them. You can enter phone numbers and other information, a salutation if you want. There's quite a few things that can be entered with each family. I want to point out this one thing. Some people like to delete a family who have moved away, or if you have a person who is deceased, oftentimes people will want to delete them out of the system. Now, I prefer not to delete anybody at any time. One reason is you always, by deleting them, you can't look back a few years later and say, oh yes, this person was part of our congregation, because the record isn't in Power Church, and you might have new people in the office who are not familiar with that person. And so as far as the church is concerned, that person never was part of the congregation. So that's why I like to keep everybody there. One thing, if you delete a person and if they have an envelope number, which is a way of keeping track of their donations, that will disappear too. So I prefer to not delete anybody. If you have a couple, sometimes a couple will both have the same envelope number to keep track of contributions, so that the tax receipt is addressed to both people. And if one of the two people passes away, you can delete the envelope number beside their name. Let me just go here, the family members, and each person will be listed here and their envelope number will be here. So as long as you have at least one person in the family who has an envelope number, those donations will be kept in the system. You don't want the situation of sending out a tax receipt with both names, even if, particularly if one of them has passed away. And the way to do that is simply delete the envelope number beside the person who has passed away. And that way the tax receipt will only go to be addressed only to the surviving person. So basically this is all the contact information. Another thing you can do is right here in this box here, I want to point out, include in membership module reports. There are various reports in the membership that can be printed. And if you do not wish to have a certain person in the report, particularly a person who has passed away, all you have to do is uncheck this box right here, and that person's name will not be part of any reports that are printed from the membership module. Once you've, if for example, like right here, I just have one person listed. If you have additional people in the family, if a new child is born, or if a person gets married, you can add new names just by clicking here. If you want to change a profile, if the address has changed, they've moved, you can change a profile by clicking this button here. Now, Power Church has a lot of other features that I'm not going to go into. You can keep track of visitations by the church to the family. There's quite a few other features that I won't get into in this session. But this is the integrated data entry where you add new people. And again, like I said, you can adjust all the information about them by going into their personal profiles, or you can just deal with them as a family. Let's see. So the main thing is to have the envelope number assigned to that person, to that family, so that you can keep track of donations. There are various reports that can be either family reports, and there are several reports that what you can do is, if you want to click on one of them, it gives a brief description of what's in the report, and you can actually run the report and actually take a look at what the report looks like. So I would encourage you to review the reports just to see if at some point you might, the church directory, for example, is one report that's often used by a congregation. So at some point, it's good to review the reports that are available because they're quite extensive, and also that gives you an idea of the reports that can be printed and reviewed. So I think that's basically all I want to go over in the membership. Now, with the, like I said about the assigning the envelope number, that immediately, once you've assigned an envelope number, it will appear in the contributions. So the person who has that envelope number, their name and address will appear in the contributions, and you can start entering contributions that the person's made. The first thing is the setup for the contributions. Now, the contributions have what they call contribution funds. And these are a list of funds in the contributions that are connected to the accounting. For example, it just may be a general donation to the church, or you can have specific revenue items in the chart of accounts in the accounting. And a good idea is to have these contribution funds have their own number, and they are connected to a specific revenue item in the accounting. For example, this one here, fund number 1, just church operations, just the general church operations. And under the accounting tab here, you can assign the account numbers. For example, this is for the Bank of Montreal and church operations. So when a contribution is posted from the contributions, they go over to the accounting, and this will put the donation that this person has made right into the church operations account. So that's sort of the first thing to do with the contributions, is go to setup and have your contributions funds. And you just go 1, 2. Some churches have many different funds. And again, they're all connected to revenue items in the accounting. So if, for example, I just want to briefly touch on the accounting, because that would maybe give a little bit more understanding about how the contributions. Power Church is a fund accounting program. And what that means is you can have many different funds set up in the accounting for different reasons. For example, in this case here, if a person gives a bequest and there's specific things that bequest wants the money to be spent on, by having a separate fund, you can keep track of all those disbursements out of that fund in just one single report can record everything. So in this case here, the contribution fund, fund number 2 in the contributions will be for the specific fund in the accounting. And so any donations to that particular fund will be entered here under fund number 2, and they will immediately, once they're posted to the accounting, they will go into that fund. The funds in accounting can be quite numerous if you wish. For example, if you have, say, a church concert or some special event that you want to keep track of how much has come in for that specific event, and also any disbursements, by setting up a separate fund for that activity, you can keep track of them a lot easier than trying to use existing accounts in the accounting to try to keep track of certain events. Oftentimes you may want to, if you have an event and you say, okay, we want to keep track of how much has come in, how much we've spent, and what the balance is, because we want to maybe use that balance for a specific purpose. You can record it all within that fund in the accounting. And it just makes it so much easier to keep track of everything. And again, the contributions will be where you would keep track of any donations to that accounting fund. Now, there are some churches that try to keep, what I like to do is have the contributions module used only if you're going to give a tax receipt. In other words, if money comes into the church for other purposes that does not involve a tax receipt, then I like to not keep it going through the contributions module. So at the end of the year, when you print the reports in the contributions module, basically you'll get all just tax receipts. Some churches try to keep track of loose offerings and other monies, and they, for some reason, they think it's important to put it through the contributions. Possibly, maybe they think that any type of contributions go through the contributions module. But I feel that only if you're going to have a tax receipt, if a person gives for a specific purpose, if a tax receipt is not applicable to that donation, then it shouldn't go through the contributions. It can go through the accounting only, and it doesn't need to go through the contributions. So, so basically, once you've done the setup of the contributions funds, then you can start entering. Usually, I like to have each contribution is connected to a deposit. So if you have a deposit going into the bank, you'll have whatever donations are part of that deposit, they can go through the contributions. If, for example, you have other monies on that deposit that are not donations where a tax receipt is applicable, then that can strictly go through the accounting, and I can show you how to sort of separate that. But this is how you would start entering contributions, and the date would be the date of the deposit. You can do a check, cash, credit card, online. You can specify how the donation is received, what method, if you wish. And then once you've entered an envelope number, I'll just do one. Again, this is not a complete name and address, but once you've entered an envelope number, then you enter a fund number. In this case, we'll do one, envelope number one, and that will go to church operations. You can put in the amount, hit twice, and it's there. And then you can go through each one. Number two, fund number two, $30, and you just go enter, and it's entered. Once you're finished entering all the donations for that deposit, you can do done. And if you want to see what you've done, you can do a report, which is unposted contributions. So basically, the contributions have only been entered. They're unposted. And by unposted, that means they haven't been posted to the accounting. So you can run this, and again, you can have them by date or however. So basically, I've just done two. And so this is where you can actually see what you've entered and has not been posted. So it gives a description of the envelope number. There'll be the name of the person, how they entered. And once you've done the entering, when the next thing would be to post the contributions. And this is when it says update fund accounting, what that means is that it will go over to the accounting. And once we get into the accounting, I'll show you how that appears. You can also, this is the other one that's quite, I use occasionally, where you only update a contributions module. There may be a situation where a donation has been made, and for some reason you just want to update a person. Maybe it's gone to the wrong person, and you want to just update the contributions module, which means this is where the tax receipt information is collected. So you can choose to just post it there, which means it doesn't go over to the accounting. It just goes to the individual's statement. So that's the posting. I want to mention about repeating contributions. If you have, some churches have pre-authorized debits, which are regular, usually monthly donations that are made, that are taken out of a person's bank account, and it's a donation to the church. And so what you see on the bank statement is the deposit for all the pre-authorized debits for, say, the first of the month or whatever date in the month. But this is where you can keep track of these, all of them, so that you don't have to enter each one every month. I mean, there are changes, and the maintain repeating contributions allows you to make changes. So you have the name, you have the envelope number, and once you've entered the envelope number, the name and address will appear. Usually it's considered cash because it comes right out of the bank account. And you can enter the fund number that the person may make a monthly donation. It could go to the just ordinary church operations, or it could go to some other specific purpose. So you can have the fund number, you can have the amount. Usually it's monthly, and this will be the date that the money will come out of their bank account. So you can go through and list a whole bunch of people that are on PADs. And so when it becomes time to record them, Power Church calls it releasing repeating contributions. And what that will do is immediately put all those people, it will add to their individual statements, and it'll also generate a contributions report that can be ready to go to the accounting. So that's a feature that can save quite a bit of time every month, saving you after entering all those PADs. Another thing, you can reassign an envelope number. If you have a person and for whatever reason the number has changed, you put the old envelope number and you can put in a new number, and then you just save it, and it'll immediately change that person's envelope number. Pledges are something, some churches keep track of pledges, and I'll say some churches don't, but if you do, you can add a pledge to a person by, again, you basically, you start with here, you find the person that you're wanting to add the pledge to, and you do add, and you put in the contribution fund number, and whether it's usually it's yearly. Usually a person gives a yearly pledge, and so you can put in the amount, and you can put the start date and end date, which would be January 1st, and then it'd be December 31st. And so that way you can add pledges to each individual, and that'll appear on their statements, on their contribution statements. So you can keep track of pledges if that's something your congregation does. Quite a few reports. All contribution statements, I mostly use this for tax, printing tax receipts, where I can just, with basically one step, I can print all the tax receipts by going to here. I can, or you can do just statements, which don't have the official tax receipt name on the tax receipt. You can just do a statement. Individual contribution statements is another thing I like to look up quite often, where I want to see an actual individual's what an individual has given. And in this case, you can pick just the totals. You can do a full detail. And what I'll do is I'll put in envelope number 1, and you can have a date range. And again, this can appear on the tax receipt. This is for tax receipt purposes. This will appear if you have this box checked. It'll give the registration, charity's registration number, a name of the person, like the envelope secretary or whoever else is the in authority for signing tax receipts, and then that can be all printed. So that's sort of a process. Again, you can do it for an individual or all contribution statements. We'll have that process of either just doing a statement, or if that little box is checked off, then a tax receipt will be generated. Unposted contributions, I briefly went over that. Repeating contributions, this again, it will be a report showing all the repeating contributions that you've set up. Posted contributions will show you what's been posted. So you can you go to this report if you want to find out some specifics of what has been posted. Selected contributors is another one I like to do. Envelope number list is good to have because it shows you what envelope numbers have been used. If you have a new person, you can go to this list and you can see what envelope numbers are available still. Active pledges. So there's quite a few reports. I find I just use a few all the time, and you'll probably be the same situation. There'll be certain reports that you really like to use. Let's see. So I think that's about all I wanted to review in the contributions. And like I said, let's go to the accounting now. I just briefly want to show you that those two entries that were made for those two people. That will be these are modified unposted transactions. So we're in the accounting, and anything that hasn't been posted, that gone through this posting transactions, they'll be unposted. Let's see. This is the one I just did. And one thing I like to do is I like to number my deposits. And so when it comes from the contributions, you always get this this wording, and I like to change that. And that way I can sort of keep track of every deposit. I like to give a number to it. So for example, the first week in January, there may be a deposit, so it will be D1. And you can give it any number, but it just makes it easier to track. And in the future, if you want to look something up, you can say, okay, I want to look up deposit D1, and it just makes it easier to find. So I like to, once it's posted over to the accounting, I like to just make that one change in this transaction. So this is basically one deposit for the contributions that have been made. And as I said before, if there are other deposits on that same deposit, that maybe if you have some rental income or some other monies that have come in that have not gone through the contributions, you enter them separately. And so in this case here, you would put the D, oh, sorry, that's put the D1 because it's the same deposit. The date would be the same as coming from the contributions, and here you would put the account numbers, the debit to the bank, and then the credit to whatever revenue item it is, so that once you've done that, you have the one deposit will have in effect two transactions in the accounting. One from the contributions module and one that has been entered strictly only in the accounting. If it's, for example, loose donations, loose cash, that would be done here this way. So it'd be a separate, in effect, journal entry to record that loose money. So when it comes to posting that one deposit, there will be 2 lines in the accounting. The first thing you would normally go to is the setup. And basically you have the chart of accounts, and there are also some repeating transactions. Now I've got 3 examples here. Bank charges, which you may get every single month. So these repeating transactions just saves you having to re-enter the debit and credit every single month. You can just call up these repeating transactions. You might have prepaid insurance that you're allocating every month. You might have a photocopy or rental, some other normal transaction that goes through the bank or through your books that happen every month. So you can set these up as repeating transactions. So that is part of the setup, is to maintain repeating transactions. Maintain list of accounting funds. Again, it sort of depends on your individual situation. And I briefly explained about funds and how you want to use them. I find most churches have quite a few different funds that they want to keep track of. And so each fund can be set up this way, where you have an accounting fund number, and then you have the assets and the liabilities, income, and disbursements would be part of the chart of accounts for that particular fund. So you can produce a balance sheet and an income statement for that one fund. It just keeps everything unique to that fund in one place, and you can print off a detailed income statement, or you can also do a general ledger for all the activity in that fund. Let's see. So the accounting funds, basically, the accounting funds, you've got 2 digits. So you can do 01 right up to 99. And if you are, and you may want to say, well, let's keep certain other types of funds separate. So you can do AA and AB right up to ZZ. So there's many different funds, many numbers you can use for as many funds as you want. So let's go to the chart of accounts. Basically, every account number has 4 digits for the account number, and then you have 3 additional ones. When you, if you're adding new account numbers, you can either have a group or a detailed account. So a group would be a heading. And so again, you can have an asset, liability, a fund, a balance, income, or expense. And then you just go through the process of assigning new account numbers, descriptions, and there's different levels that you can use. You can use level 1 to level 6. Level 1 would be sort of assets. It would sort of be the major assets, liabilities, income and expense. You can go right down to level 6. Now, you can see in this example here, I have the heading, this is a group, Then you can have operating expenses as level 2, salary and benefits. You can have a group for the minister or the caretaker. These would be group headings. Now, what I like to use these other 3 for example, if you have a caretaker, and that person eventually leaves the church and you hire a new person. So what I like to do is I will have the heading, like for example, caretaker would be a group heading, and under that I'll have the names of the individual caretakers that have been employed. So I will use the account number for the caretaker, but this 000, I would start with 1. That would be the first one that you've hired. If they leave and you hire a new person, they become number 2. So basically, you keep the same account number for the caretakers, but these sub accounts, you can call them, will have the individual names. So that avoids the situation of setting up new accounts, many new accounts for each new person that's hired. You basically just deal with the sub accounts. And again, they would be at level 6. So what another good feature of Power Church is the account numbers can be changed. In other words, if you have proper spacing initially, but all of a sudden it becomes too crowded and you want to put in a new account number in a certain spot that's already taken, you can move that account number that's there and move it somewhere else. You can adjust the account numbers, and also you can change the descriptions right here in the maintain chart of accounts. So it's quite flexible in moving account numbers around. Okay, so basically I just, mainly I use chart of accounts, repeating transactions, and also list of accounting funds. Those are the main ones I do with the setup. So once you want to start entering transactions, it would depend on what the transaction is that you need to enter. Basically, if you do entering transactions, it's basically a journal entry. In this case here, say we're at February and we go to the end of February, and you want to do your repeating transactions. So you go to that box that says repeating transactions. They all appear. If you double click on it, it'll bring it up, and then you can save it. So basically, at the end of the month, you can bring forward all your repeating transactions fairly quickly and easily. And so at that point, these unposted transactions will include these repeating transactions. These ones here are checks that have been written, and that's in the accounts payable. And we go to that. That's sort of, we have basically, I won't mention payroll because I'm sure you basically do a journal entry for your payroll transactions. But Power Church is able to do a payroll. It's got a payroll feature to it. Even though this is an American product, it can be with small adjustments can be tailored to the Canadian payroll system. One thing about accounts payable and accounts receivable that you need to be aware of is Power Church works on a cash basis. In other words, there's some accounting programs where you can set up an invoice and the expense will be recorded, say, in March, and it's paid in April. So you sort of have those with other accounting programs. You have that distinction. You can put the expense when you set up the invoice in 1 month and pay it later. With Power Church, these two features is strictly on a cash basis. So the date of the check is when the date that the expense will appear. So if you have, even though you might be, for example, in April, you've got this March expense, you would record that payable in March, and you would generate the check with a March date, so that the expense gets into March. You have two ways of recording payables. One is if you do manual checks, the other is if you do computer checks. So the process is somewhat different depending on which one you're using. With manual checks, this is how it appears. You would add and basically the date. So you've already written the check manually, and so now you're entering the details about the check. So you'd be entering your check number, the amount. This is where there's for accounts payable. I should first, before I get into this, whoops. Accounts payable have a setup. And this is the main one where you're recording vendors' information. And this is important if you're using computer check, because you want to have the address correct, and you want to have that right. If it's a manual check, is not quite as critical. But the vendor ID is the sort of the main thing that you're working with to connect to the various vendors, and this is a 6-digit ID. And what I like to do, for example, is if you have a company, and I would use the vendor ID to identify that company. If it's a longer name than 6 digits, I would just put the first 6 digits of that company name in. For individuals that you're reimbursing, what I do is I take the first 4 letters of the person's last name, I do a space, and then the last digit is the first digit of their first name. And when you enter the accounts payable with manual checks, you need to put the 6 digits. And if you have some kind of a system that's easy to remember, you can just type this in, and the name of the person or company will appear, their address. And so it just makes it easier if you have some kind of a system where you can identify who the vendor is, because then you can just type it in and it'll appear. And once you've entered that, the accounts will appear down here. If you have, under setup, you have vendors. If you have here under accounting information, down here, this is for each vendor or each person. What I like to put in as a debit and credit will be obviously the bank. But the expense will be the normal expense that is used for this either vendor or person. Vendors are usually always the same expense. Individuals can have more than one expense depending on what they're purchasing. But I usually like to put in the one that's most used for that vendor or person. And that is because once you add and once you type in the vendor ID, the normal distribution will appear, which just makes it just a little bit quicker to actually enter a transaction. The GST, this is probably already set up in your system, but under preferences, the accounting setup, the accounts payable, this is how the GST is set up, so that when you are entering a vendor transaction, you would put in the total GST that you paid, and the 50% is automatically calculated for you. And so the distribution in the accounts payable will be automatic. It'll automatically take the 50% out of the expense and have a separate line item for the GST that's receivable. With the this is the process of computer checks. This is where you set up an invoice. So you do the vendor ID, which will automatically print up the name of the company, and you can date it, and then this will be the distribution. If you agree that what's in the vendor profile is what you want, then you just save it, and that would be the first step in a computer setup. The next step would be to print computer-generated checks. Once you've entered the invoices, and I haven't got any entered, but this allows you to actually print the checks. So in other words, if you enter a few payables and you're ready to print them through the computer, you would just have to enter the date that you want the check to be on the check, and also you would enter the first check number. So you just put in you make sure that the payables you want to pay are all checked off. You put the blank checks in the printer, and they're all printed through this process. This one down here is where you post any payables, either manual checks or computer checks, where the computer check has been generated. And this will move everything that's unposted, it'll move it over to the accounting, which is these few here. These I've done these before. So it comes from the accounts payable. It gives you the company, it's got the distribution. So when you post the accounting, it'll do the checks as well as the other transactions. I haven't come across a church yet who does the accounts receivable. For example, if you have rentals, usually what a church will do is when they actually receive the rental check, it'll just be part of their normal deposits in the accounting. So it's basically a transaction similar to those other ones. So let me also, so with the accounts payable, they have reports. This is selected paid items. And here you're able to, once you highlight that, the unposted is, they have not been posted, but if it's been posted, you want to look up a previous payable transaction that you've made, you can just enter the vendor ID and the date range. And if you click this one here, include account distributions, it will generate all the payables that were made to that particular vendor based on the date range that you've selected. So basically, really, I mostly use the first two in the accounts payable reports. Another thing with the accounting, let's see. Oh yes, once you can always change the working month. Now, in this case here, this is the last one that's available. And once you've hit that date, you have to close a month. So once you close a month, the newer editions allow you to go back and make transactions 18 months prior to the current month. And so if you, to move ahead in your entries, you have to close a previous month 18 months ago, and then you're allowed to change the current month. In this case, it would be March. That all of a sudden that becomes the current month. Budgets. One thing I want to point out about budgets is one of the accounting reports is the annual budget worksheet. And I like to use that basically because they'll give the, say you're getting into the fall, you're starting to look at budgets for the next year. It'll give you the actual that's been spent on each income and expense item account. It'll give you the budget for the current year, and it'll leave another column so that you can fill in the budget for next year. So that's one report. There are other budget reports that you can also do, but this is what I like to do for preparing next year's budget. Once you've come up with the budget figures for next year, I'll just show you under maintain tentative accounts. There's a budget tab here for each account, and this is where you would distribute the total for this particular, it's called assets, but it's for the expense, income expense items that you're budgeting. You have to distribute it by month. You get a total, and so that total is there for next year's budget. Budgeting often, sometimes people who want to do the budgeting, they distribute it maybe 1/12 for each month. Realistically, revenue, some revenue items vary, where you'll get less in the summer and more, say, around December. So that would, if you're going to sort of do it properly, you would go through and try to allocate the total to the various months in a way that's hopefully a little bit more realistic than 1/12. What I do is I take a look at the previous year's actual. For example, if you have just general donations to the church, I'll look at last year's actual and say, okay, 10% of the total came in December. So for the next year, I'm going to make next year's budget, 10% of the total for next year will go in December. Maybe only 5% came in August. So I would make August 5% of next year's total. There are other budget items that you pay once a year. Oftentimes, you know which month those expenses occur, and so you can put that expense into the month that the expense will occur. Sometimes you may be out a month or two. And so when I actually do the financial statements each month, I go through them and I look at the budget because I try to match up budget with actual. And particularly if you have one item that's only appearing once a year, you want to try to get the budget and the actual in the same month. So that may mean, say you think it's usually April, for some reason it got delayed till May. So I would adjust in this part of the chart of accounts, I would adjust that, would move it from April to May the yearly budget for that particular item, just so that the actual and budget can be in the same month. So let's see, payables, and there's okay. So that's a little bit about budgeting. Reconciliation of bank accounts. This is a fairly, they upgraded the process, so that it's a pretty good process where you just enter the date that you're doing the bank reconciliations for, the bank statement balance. You do next, and you can click off your income and expense items to do the reconciliation.
Clearing the screen before we had a chance to look at it.
Oh, yeah, that contains some personal stuff. So basically your deposits are up here and your expenses are down there, and you just click them off. And that just changes the balance. Let's see, reports. So basically, account activity is like a general ledger, where you can specify specific accounts that you want printed out in a specific time period. The trial balance, balance sheet, income and expense statements, you can do it by fund, by month, by year. A journal report is one that I use quite often. Basically, it shows all the activity in a particular month, or you can have a range of months. And so you can basically see all the payables, all the deposits, all the journal entries that appeared in that month will be on this one report. Let's see. And again, you have the budget reports. Chart of accounts will just give you all the accounts, all the a report showing all the accounts. Let's see, what else I want to go over. Just a couple miscellaneous items. Any report that's in PowerChurch can be exported into Excel, Word, PDF, and there's 2 or 3 other different formats. One thing I like to do, all my entries for a given month before I do any posting in the accounting. Once they're posted in the accounting, they're in the books. And if you've made a mistake, then you've got to make another entry to try to correct that mistake. So what I do is I like to enter all the transactions for a given month, and then I back it up. That's under utilities. I'm not sure if I can show you this, but under utilities, you can do a backup. So what I like to do is once everything's been entered and not posted, I do a backup. Then I post it. I do my bank reconciliation. I look over, I do print my statements. And if I see anything that needs to be corrected, I can always restore it, correct it on the restored copy rather than having to make a journal entry to make a correction. Oftentimes it's quicker, it's certainly neater. Rather than having some journal entries making corrections, you've basically corrected the mistake on the original entry. So I think that's about all I want to cover right now. So Elias,
yes.
ready for questions or?
So I would like if everybody could mute the if you could mute yourself, not you, Gordon, everybody else. Well, we have received in the chat lots of questions. So I am going to start with the questions. I don't know if Shailene has to, just wants to say something before. Shailene?
No, it's okay. You can go ahead with the questions.
Okay. So if your question is not answered by the end of the lecture, at the end we'll share Mr. Lowe's email, so you can feel free to send your questions to him, and he will answer all the emails. Okay. Another thing is we have made a survey on this event today. So what I'll do, I'll also post the link for the survey in the chat, so anybody that attended the survey today can respond. Okay, attended the event today can respond the survey. This will help the Synod office to provide more a better service to all the parishes. Okay, so the link of the survey is posted on the chat. So if you could take a time at the end to answer, it's a very brief survey. We will be we will appreciate that. And of course, the questions that were sent to the chat will also send these questions to Mr. Lowe, so he will answer, and then we'll broadcast the email to everybody that attended as well. I'm going to start with a question from Suzanne. The question is, most families don't share emails. Is there a way to input email addresses for each family member and categories for them, let's say youth group, or if they participate in any ministry in the church?
You can have a family email address, which possibly might be the head of the household. That's their email. But each individual profile, you can put a separate email address.
Okay, thank you. Another question is from Judy Thomas. Can you just mark a name in the membership? I think she's talking about membership. So can you mark a name as deceased or moved away for clarity?
Yes, there is a spot, I think it's called status. And you can have they can be a member, an adherent, or a deceased, or what. There's several that you can pick from, so you can change a person's status.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if you could show us, just to.
Let's see.
If anybody has any questions,
Personal status right here.
Okay.
Member active, inactive, and you can add new codes. Visitor, you could add deceased. So this is where you would personalize it. This sort of just comes with the program. It just has a few possibilities. So you can add a new code, and a deceased will appear, and that way you can make that person their personal status would be deceased.
Okay, thank you. The other question we have is from Meredith. Is there a way to print a report of every tax receipt? Oh yeah, you already answered that. To print the report on every tax receipt for a given year, you already showed us how to do.
Right. Yeah. It's all contributions. They call it statements, but as you go through the steps, the near the last step, it says if you tick off this, it does the tax receipt. It prints the a place for the person to sign it, and it also has the CRA wording. So that's where you do everybody at the end of the year.
Okay. So another question is from Maggie Sanders. I contribute through my bank on a monthly basis, but the money goes to two areas. One, church operations, and another amount goes to refugee fund. How is this handled, please?
Under the, if you're dealing with the PADs or pre-authorized debits, they're repeating contributions. And here, you would have the fund number. So you would have a, say, for example, fund number 4 would be refugees. So this is how it would be distributed. So this one person would have it. They would have two of these pages, one for the just general donations and one for refugees. And so that would appear for that one person would have two. And so when you, what Power Church calls release them, these repeating contributions, they're released so that the person gets the two lines, one for the refugee and one for the general operations.
Okay, Maggie, did it answers your question? Okay. Let's go to the other question. It's from Lois. Can you merge two envelope numbers into one envelope?
No, if you're thinking of two individuals and you want to make one number.
No, it was, we have the same individual that's been given two different numbers because they didn't realize they were already in the system.
No,
How do you merge them into one?
You can't, unfortunately. What I would do is to do it properly, you've got to go through the one, let's say you have two of them, one is a short list, the other is a longer list. Take the short list and add it to the one that you want to keep, the number that you want to keep. And that's where I showed you where you can post the contributions either to the fund accounting. Let's see, oh, that's, oops. There's nothing to post, but under the posting, you could post to the accounting, the fund accounting, or to the individual person. That was the last one on that list. So you had two choices. So that way you would be posting, you would be entering them, but because they've already been entered and you want to move that to another person, you would just post it to that individual's tax receipt.
Does it answer your question, Lois?
Yeah. Unfortunately, you just can't merge it. It's got to be done the long and hard way.
Okay. Thank you. Another question we have is from Reese. Reese is not here in the room anymore, but I assume other people have the same question. Does every donor get an envelope number regardless of how they donate?
If you want to keep track of their donations to get a tax receipt, they have to have an envelope number. You have to give them one. Obviously, a child would be in the system, they'd be in a family, but they would have an envelope number beside their name, even though maybe the parents both have the same envelope number, the children would not be given a number.
Okay.
If that answers. So a person doesn't have to have an envelope number, but then you won't be able to keep track of their donations to get a tax receipt.
I see. Catherine Payne asked if, oh no, she was actually answering Reese's questions from her perspective, sorry. Gail McMahon asked if you could give a better explanation on membership, but I think we'll leave this to a next opportunity when we have a more advanced webinar, probably, and Gail is not here anymore in the room. So, well, Shailene, you asked the question, and it's a very complicated question. Would you want to ask him directly? You are muted.
Gordon, so this is one of the common questions that we hear from our parishes. There are cases wherein one donor would like to have the tax receipt issued to another donor. Like in other software, there is a way to reassign the tax receipt to the person to whom it will be issued. And I wonder if there's a feature at our church to do that, or we have to create a new donor in order to transfer the tax receipt.
Can you give me just a little bit more details about what you're trying to achieve? Like when you say another person, are they in the system or just, can you just explain it a little bit better?
Let's say when a company of the owner makes a donation, most of the time the parish will record it as a donation from the company. And then what happened is that at a later time, there are cases wherein the accountant of the company would like the parish to issue the tax receipt to the name of the owner.
Right.
So
I'm going to answer that by saying, generally, if a company gives a donation, the company has, it's an expense for the company. So in effect, they've received 100% write-off or benefit from that donation. If you then turn around and give a tax receipt to the owner or somebody else, they get a benefit because they can put that tax receipt on their income tax. So I would say I would not recommend it, because basically for that one donation, more than 100% has been taxes has been avoided. The company gets 100%. They can't use the tax receipt because a company is not an individual. An individual just adds it as a deduction from their income, but a company can't do that. They get 100%. If you give a tax receipt also to the owner, you've given them another benefit. So,
sorry.
So I would say it's illegal to do that.
What we normally do is we ask a letter from the accountant certifying that they made a transfer on the shareholder's account to certify that it's not recorded as an expense on the company.
Okay.
So there's a withdrawal on the shareholder's account.
Right. Okay. If that's done, then the company hasn't benefited. So the individual will now get the benefit. So in your example, yes. So basically, that donation could be recorded against added to the person's tax receipt. And again, because when the initial donation came in, it would be recorded in the books. Because it shouldn't go through the contributions, because the tax receipt won't be issued to the company. Now you're saying, okay, I want to make this transaction, which is in our books. I want to now add it to an individual's tax return. So that would be a separate entry. You would not post it to the accounting once you've entered it in, but it would be against that person's their envelope number. It's in effect you're recording it as their donation, and you would post that only to their statement and not over to the accounting.
Okay.
So in effect, you've recorded it twice in a way. The first way is through the books, and it would not be in the contributions. Now you're doing it through the contributions, and because it's not affecting the books anymore, it just affects that one person's tax statement. You would enter it as a donation, and you would only post it within the contributions module, which was the last of the selection. It was the last one on the list that I said you could also post it within the contributions module and not the accounting.
Don Thompson asked the question: Is there a report that facilitates reconciliation of the dollar amount of tax receipts issued to the total contributions revenue in the accounts?
What happens is when you are entering contributions, they're going to many revenue items. They're going to sort of the general operations of the church, but also they're also going to various funds. So to sort of to really do a reconciliation, okay, well, how many dollars have gone through the contributions? You would have to look in the accounting at different places where those contributions have gone. So there isn't a report that, I mean, the contributions will give you a total what was contributed for the year, but in the accounting, you've got to go through several revenue items to find out, to sort of match up where it came from. So, but there isn't a report in the accounting that will tell you these are donations.
Thank you. So Pat Brandon, I didn't understand your question. If you want to step in and ask him directly. I think.
Hi, thank you. We're having real problems with the bulk email in the Power Church system. We're unable to embed pictures in the body of the email. The attachments are okay as long as they're PDFs, but they can't be reviewed before you send. Also, checking the links that you might put in the body of the email is difficult, and it's kind of a formatting nightmare. Is there a way to get around that?
Unfortunately, I really can't answer that question because I just don't do that. I'm just
Perhaps we can have a special communications webinar some night and address those problems, because we've looked at going to MailChimp and it's, you know, it's a little bit of a palaver. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I have been receiving some messages here asking for Mr. Lowe's contact information. These will be provided at the end. So just hang in there and we'll provide his contact information at the end. And I just want to remind people that are here, if you could briefly click in the chat where I posted the link for the survey. This will help us build the new the upcoming webinars we have. I'm posting it again. So let me go ahead and ask the other questions we have received. Let me see here. Power Church is an American program. Does this mean that the data are stored in the US or go through the US? This is a question from Allison.
The Power Church, if you buy the program and you install it on your computer, then it's not shared. They also have an online version, and I think the cost is something like $50 US a month, where different people in the church can all sort of go into the program from wherever they are through the internet. So all that data is on their Power Church servers. So that is one way that it's in the US. All the data is in the US. But if you have the program, you have a CD or you downloaded it, then it's just on your computers. It's not anywhere else.
Okay, thank you. Andrew Campbell is asking, what security levels does Power Church have to restrict access to the contributions module to the envelope secretary and the treasurer?
If you see my screen, under preferences, they have passwords and permissions. So this way you can pick several people and you can give them, it's quite extensive as far as you can pick the various modules, membership, accounting, contributions. You can give a person access. They can add or change. They can delete. So, and again, accounting. So each module allows you can restrict a person or give them access. And again, it would be access only. They can add or change or delete. So it's quite extensive what restrictions you can give a person. And they have to put in their own password. And the administrator is the one who assigns all these restrictions. So it can be quite restrictive in what you allow a person to see or do.
Okay, thank you. The other question we have is, let me see here. What is the best way to export a report to Excel so that the formatting is not so corrupted? This is a question from Liz Lawrence.
Now, so I'm going to assume that it didn't come out, Liz, how did it come out, or what format did you try to export the report in?
I think Liz is muted.
Okay.
If she's here. Okay.
Usually a PDF is pretty good. Excel is maybe not the best, but of course you can always manipulate it after that. But usually a PDF comes out pretty good.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. Let me see. Well, I think these are the questions you sent in the chat. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to raise your hand in the reaction button below on the toolbar, and I'll give.
This is Jack Wood, and I'm not on the video, so that's why you can't see my virtual hand raised. But I do have one question. As I see it, you can enter members in both the family mailing list and the integrated data entry. Is one way better than the other? Traditionally, I use the integrated data entry and would enter all family members under the personal profiles. But is one better than the other, or what is the reason? I guess I'm asking for the two.
Yeah, I mean, I always go to the integrated. It's just easier because that way you
that's what I find.
You can do everybody all at once.
Right.
So, but yes, you're right. You can do it both ways, but the integrated is the easiest.
Thank you, Gordon.
You're welcome.
Shanti has her hand raised. She has a question.
Hi.
Hi.
Is there a way that Power Church can prompt us if we are issuing the tax receipt again?
No, like for example, if you say at the end of the year you do everybody, and then for some reason somebody loses one, so you have to do an additional one for that one person, you can go to the individuals on the reports, individual contribution statement. So you can do a separate one for that one person, but there's no way that Power Church will tell you, oh, this person has already received a tax receipt. You can do it many times, but it's not going to tell, the program won't tell you that it's been done more than once.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shanti. Lois Holmand, please.
Hi, I did put in a list of questions regarding membership, the membership area in the chat list, but just for a future webinar would be really great to see more. I did have, you were showing multiple users at one point. Is that only the online version? Because where we're looking at, say, problems, if I was to back up, our treasurer uses the accounting part of it and I use the membership part. So backing up on the same computer, I have to make sure now, I guess, that we're coordinating when it's being backed up and when it isn't. How did you get all those people listed that had different rights for doing contributions and doing all of this?
In other words, you would have to go in and you enter your own password, and the treasurer would also have to enter their own password, and that would immediately give them the restrictions. As far as usually it's pretty straightforward. If one person does all the financial, the accounting part, and another person does all the membership. It gets a little trickier when you're when more than one person is dealing with one area. Then you do have to be careful that somebody doesn't add something and then it's restored and it wipes out information. But as long as you're dealing with membership, you're backing it up. Then you could send a backup to the treasurer. He could restore it.
See, we only have one program. So we don't have the online program. Is that what you're showing us?
Well, the online obviously will allow several people to go in to see the same thing.
Yeah, so we don't have that.
Right. So basically, you have to be very careful. You can have the same program on more than one computer, but you do have to be very careful that what is backed up and restored doesn't eliminate something that somebody else has done. So you can, if you want to, for example, send the treasurer your membership back up, well, he can receive it by email and restore it.
But we only have it on one computer because we don't have the online version. We only have.
Okay, you can have the program on more than one computer. For example, you can have it. Pardon?
How would we get permission for more than?
Do you have the CD when you first bought the program?
It was there when I came, so I have no idea. But I guess I could contact the company. And ask them.
Some people, what they'll do is they'll say, I got a new computer. I need to get the program back on my computer. So what Power Church will do is they will allow you to download, as long as your program is registered, they will give you a link to download program on another computer.
Okay, good.
So that's how you'll get really the same program on more than one computer, and you wouldn't have to go through the online.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
Thank you, everybody. I will invite. Sorry, just a second. I will stop this sharing, and I will share this. So I'll invite you to, if you have any other questions, to send your questions to Mr. Gordon Lowe. His email is on the screen. I will invite Shailene if she wants to say anything. Okay.
Can you go back to the link?
Sorry.
Can you go back to his email address?
Of course, of course.
Thank you.
No worries, it's my pleasure. I hope everybody liked the event. If you want to send the questions directly to the diocese of New Westminster. We can, of course, forward your questions to Mr. Lowe, and he will take care of answering your questions. And please, again, if you could take your time to answer the survey, it would be very much appreciated. Okay, does anybody want to say anything?
Gotta find the link.
The link for the survey is on the chat. I'm gonna post it one more time.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Sorry. So the link of the survey is on the chat. If anybody wants to say anything, I'm gonna leave it to you. No? So thank you, everybody. We'll hope to hear from you again, and thank you for coming.